Kar Kadosh, Erev Tov. Shiur tonight has been kindly sponsored by Mr. Jordan Malka, Bezrat Hashem. We are going to be starting on this. This is going to be Shiur number 9 or 10, but it's probably 10 or 11 by the time we're up to here. This is going to be number C or Gimel. Gimel in the Ivrit, page 5 on the bottom, or number page 6, C on the bottom. We're talking about drops of milk on a meaty pot. Okay? Drops of milk on a meaty pot. In this section, yeah? Page 6 on the bottom. Yeah? In this section, okay? We're going to discuss common questions concerning drops of milk that they come and they spritz. You know what spritz is? It's in Ladino. Yeah? That it spritzes, right? On a fleshik pot, on a meaty pot. Okay? So, for example, Erev Shabbat, it is common for multiple burners to be used simultaneously. What is the halakha if some dairy pasta sauce or soup comes and spritzes on a meaty pot and that is on the fire? Or even more common, what is if some of the meat sauce that spritzes on the Shabbat hot water urn? Are you allowed to make dairy coffee with the water that is in the urn? Yeah, one more time. You've got the urn, the kumkum, right? You've got the meat that spritzes on the kumkum. And now you want to come and you want to make yourself a coffee. Now the coffee is dairy. Can you make yourself a dairy coffee with the water that there was the meat that spritzed onto the pot, onto the urn? Similarly, what is halakha if you heat up leftover chicken soup on Sunday evening, and as the pot heats up, you notice that some drops of milk spilled onto the lid of the soup and when it was in the refrigerator. So imagine it's in the fridge, some drops of milk fell onto the lid, and now you're heating it up. So what are you allowed to eat the soup? As with all the sugyot, we're going to start with the earliest sources and then go down to the modern day poskim. Okay, so we're going to start. Before learning the Rishonim, it is important to note that when a non-kosher substance falls directly into a kosher food, we assume it disperses into the food, and if there is shishim against it, everything is permitted. Okay, that's usually. So one more time, whenever you have shishim, page 7 on the top. So whenever you have shishim, so it's going to be okay. Yeah, perfect. Now what happens, he says, right? Well, when a drop of milk spills, right, on the outside, time. So one more time, it's important to know non-kosher falls directly into kosher food. We always have the shishim. You remember, we always spoke about shishim. Take 60 times, and if you have 60 times, it's going to be okay. But when a drop of milk spills on the outside of a meaty pot, the Rishonim debate whether the drop of milk travels into the food, or it remains in that section of the walls of the pot, or it spreads a bit through the walls of the pot. Meaning like this. This is the pot. Yeah, I'm going to have the milk that comes right here. What happens to that milk? Does the milk that hits here on the outside of the pot, does it go inside and into the food? Does it go inside and through the walls, all the walls? Or does it go inside and stays right here? 3 choices. Capish or not? Shalosh opziot.
If you touch the pot.
Yes, the outside of the pot. We're not inside. Okay? Clear? 3 options. The Tur puts a 3-way machloket regarding what happens to the drop of milk, and the Bet Yosef adds a 4th opinion to make it easier for you guys. Yeah? So one more time. Tur. Let's see the Tur. Tur is on page 30. Tront. Yeah? Number 9. Neuf. Yeah? Over here. Sorry, not neuf. It's number 10. Yeah, number 10. Okay, number 10. Tur Bet Yosef. Tipat chalav shenafla la kedera she'etz el ha'esh. You've got a drop of milk that falls on the pot by the fire. Mibachutz, on the outside. Afilu im yesh betavshil shebekedera shishim kenegda. Even if you have in the food 60 times keneged, eno yachol levatla. You cannot annul it. V'im ken, and if so, hatipa oseret hagdera kol sevivotea v'ne'esar tashil sheba. So therefore, it's going to prohibit the gdera, everything around it, and the food inside is going to become also not kosher. Capish? That's shita number 1. Shita number 1, it went inside, penetrated. Even if you have 60 times, Yeah, the outside.
It's inside.
No, but it penetrates. Because when it goes on the outside,
Because it's hot?
yes, obviously it's boiling hot, yeah?
Okay. And if it's...
I want to say, this is the first opinion. First opinion, it goes inside, penetrates, even if you have 60 times the food, keneged the drop, everything's asur.
Oh.
Second shita, Rabbi Meir Mirotumburg. Remember Rabbi Meir Mirotumburg, right, was the rabbi of the Mordechai, of the Ramah, of all these big rabbis in Ashkenaz. He was the one that was put in jail, right, that he passed away in jail. Okay? Sheim yeshiv tavshil shishim pe'amim shishim. You need 60 times 60 keneged the tipa. Then it's mutar. Shatipa eno oseret el ad shishim kenegda. V'im yesh betavshil shishim keneged otam shishim, it's mutar. So if you have 60 times 60, it's going to be mutar. That's the second shita. Third shita, we're going to see it in English and we're going to try to explain each one, obviously, to see what's going on. Third shita, sever mitzvot. Right? So the sever mitzvot, there's obviously, remember, the sever mitzvot gadol and katan. That's a samag and samak. Right? Sever mitzvot gadol is samag, sever mitzvot katan is samak. So the sever mitzvot katav, שאם נפלה כנגד התבשיל, אין צריך ל-60 כנגד הטיפה שמפפה לפנים והביא כאילו נפלה בתבשיל. ואם נפלה במקום הנקן, ואם מפפה בדופן הגדרה, סמוך לרוטב כל כך שאין 60 כנגד הטיפה, נעשה לאותו מקום של הגדרה, ואם יערה התבשיל דרך מקום הגדרה, הרי זה יעשה לתבשיל וזה תקנתו, שיניחנה כך, ולא ייגע בה עד שיצטנן. This is actually a very interesting one. Listen to this one. You know what it all depends? Where did it fall? What does that mean? Look here. The Coke is up to here. Pretend that the Coke is the meat. Yes, the meaty pot. We're talking about a meaty pot. Meaty pot, meat. Says the Samak, it all depends where the drop fell. One more time. A drop of milk comes, boom. Says the Samak, if the drop of milk hits here, it's within where the food is, right? So then, as long as I have shishim in the food, keneged here, it's okay. Usually you have that because you have 60 times in the food, keneged the thing. Now, why? Because what happens is that once it hits here and it's by the food, it's kilu, it disperses amongst everything. The taste, everything goes around everything. So therefore, what happens? I could use the food that has 60 times, keneged the drop. Perfect. Okay. What happens if it falls here? The drop falls here.
Empty.
It's empty. So what happens? I cannot use the food down here to permit the drop that's here. It stays here. So what happens? He goes like this. He says, if right now I'm going to take the pot and I'm going to pour out over here.
Oh, okay. He's going to make
so now here is a big problem because now I need 60 times over here when it's going to get to here. So what am I supposed to do? It's very, very simple. Leave it like this until it gets cold. Why? Because when it gets cold, now that's it. Now I'm going to pour it out. It's not going to prohibit anything anymore.
Why?
Because you're right. Because anything that's cold cannot prohibit. Even if I'm going to tell you that the drop went here and it prohibits this area, it cannot. There's nothing here. So therefore, it cannot prohibit anything, right? And when it's cold, only when it's hot. No, so it stayed here. And if it does spread, so then this would annul it.
Oh, yeah.
You understand? Yeah. So it stays here. So therefore, he just says, Yanichena, he says, leave it. And then what? He says, leave it until it gets cold. And then you're allowed to do it. So that was going to be the third shita of the Samak. So remember, 3 shitot, right? In the Rishonim. Comes a Bet Yosef, and he's going to add you the fourth one. So we already saw 3. Now we're going to see number 4, right? Says the Bet Yosef, Tipa shenafla al dofen hakli, mesab kalan, it's a doubt, and perek dam chatat, im mefapad bechol hakli or lo, whether it's going to be mefapad an entire kli or not. Hilkach, therefore, keshenafla keneged harotev. Yeah, he comes and he says, if it's going to fall keneged harotev, yesh beroto shishim min hatipa, mutar mima nashach. ואם מפפה בכל הכלי, הרי נתפתלה, ואם אינה מפפת, אז לא יעשר, אבל נפלה נגד הריקן, שמא מפפה בדופן הגדרת סמוך לרוטב, כל כך, שאין 60 מן הטיפה, ונעשה אותו מקצת כלי נבלה, ושיראה מן הרוטב, מן הכלי, ילך הרוטב לאותו מקצת הכלי, ויעשר הכל. לפיכך, אם הניח להצטנן שלא הגביע הרוטב כלל מעת נפלו עד שנצטנן לגמרי, אם כן, אז לא נגע הרוטב כלל באיסור, הלקח מותר. So he's explaining it. Yeah? So now let's go here. Look here. Number 1.
That's what is that?
No, this is a Tur and this is Bet Yosef. Okay, now look here. Back to page 7. Number one, samag, first one. The drop of milk is absorbed, right, and travels only within the walls of the pot, which thereby forbids the entire pot. That subsequently causes all the food in the pot to be forbidden. So that was the first shita in the tur. You remember we said the drop comes and hits here. It doesn't matter where. Because remember, this thing of the where does it fall in the pot was the third shita of the sama. Right? Right now, it falls in the pot. I cannot use the food which is inside the pot to annul it. And therefore, when it falls in the pot, right, it's going to prohibit the entire pot. Once the entire pot is prohibited, now the food inside of it is going to be prohibited. Right? It's a domino effect, but I cannot use the food to help me to permit it. That was the first shita. The second shita, which was Ma'aram Rotumu, the drop of milk travels through and is absorbed within the walls of the pot. But we're worried that the drop of milk spreads to an area just under 60 of its size and forbids that entire area. Therefore, if there is shishim in the food against the area of the pot that became forbidden, then the food is permitted, which means you need 3,600 times the drop of the milk, because we assume that the milk spreads to an area of the pot just under 60 of its size, and that entire area becomes forbidden, and then you need 60 times that. So one more time. I've got the pot. I come and I have the drop of the milk. If the drop of the milk spreads too much and it spreads after 60, it's permitted. Because you remember, it's always batel, b'shishim.
After 60.
What? If it spreads out and now there's no 60 times anymore, connected to the drop, everything's permitted. Why is it permitted? Right? Because at the end of the day, right, there's nothing there anymore. Isur is only if there's going to be shishim. If there's not going to be, thank you, if there's not going to be shishim, right, it's going to be mutar. So here in this case, when it spreads out and now there's nothing, that's it. So what happens? I'm going to suspect that it doesn't spread out to become shishim. It's going to spread out to, let's say, 55, 58, whatever it is. So now when it spreads out, it doesn't spread out the entire thing, because then it becomes, it's like diluting something. If I'm going to tell everyone here, this is Coke, so it's permitted. I'm going to take a drop of milk and I put it inside. One drop. Is this permitted?
Yes.
Pretend it's meat. Of course. Yes. Why? Becomes diluted. What if I put a few drops? So it all depends. Right? Do I have 60 keneged or not? Right. If I'm going to say that the drop of milk here spreads so much, there's nothing left. There's no drop of milk. It's batel.
What do you mean?
So
it's
therefore,
evaporated?
What?
It's evaporated.
It becomes annulled. It becomes batel.
There, it doesn't
No,
batel.
it becomes batel.
If it's there, it doesn't matter. If it's spread or one drop like that, it's still there. If it's
because if it spreads and now there's nothing there anymore, because at the end of the day, when you have so much volume, there's nothing left. If there's nothing left, it becomes batel. It's like I'm putting it inside of a big cup of water, right? So what happens? Now I'm going to say that it's going to prohibit this amount. This amount is going to be what? 58, or he says, let's say 60 times almost. So what do I have to do? I need 60 times in the food, kaful 60 times the drop. So when I have 60 times in the food, kaful the 60 times of what became asul, so I need 60 times 60. So that becomes 3,600. So I need 3,600 keneged that one drop of the milk. Okay, that was the second shita. Third shita, right, is if the drop of milk splatters against the lower half of the pot that is full, and there's shishim of the food in the pot against the drop, the food is permitted, right? This is the one about the food on the bottom. You remember? So if it's on the food on the bottom, it's going to be permitted. Why? I've got 60 in the food, can I get the drop? But if the drop splatters against the upper part of the pot where there's no food, we're worried that the drop of milk spreads until the contents in the pot to an area of just under 60 times, and then it becomes forbidden. Therefore, you must wait until it becomes cooled down, and then you could empty the pot. Because if you move it now, then the contents will come into contact with the walls of the pot and become forbidden. The Bet Yosef explains the position of the samak. It's based upon the Gemara in Zevachim. The Gemara in Zevachim basically says, right, it's uncertain whether a drop that falls on the outside of a pot spreads throughout the entire keli or not. Therefore, when the drop falls opposite an area of the pot that is full, and that area is filled with the food contains shishim, everything's permitted. Because if the drop spreads throughout the entire pot, it's patel b'shishim. And if it does not spread throughout the entire pot, right, so then he says, it's most likely enter the food, where it's again with the shim. However, he says when the drop falls on the upper part of the pot, right, opposite, right, the empty section of the pot, there's only the safek whether the drop spread throughout the pot. Therefore, we're machmin to say that it's spread a bit and only until the area of the pot that is full. Thus, you must wait until it cools down, and then it's going to be permitted. That was the third shita. אמרתי את זה 3 פעמים.
אמרת את זה כבר?
כן. Right, number 4. Right, the number 4 was the Ravan. The Ravan, the Bet Yosef quotes the Ravan who paskins that if there's going to be shishim in the pot, it doesn't make a difference where it lands because we assume the milk always finds its way to enter the food, and therefore it's always batel b'shishim. So this was I think it was the let me see here. Yeah, this is the Ravan's pshat, right? Which is the Bet Yosef that he brings down this Ravan. Okay, fine. Now we're going to say as follows. Okay, so one more time. We've got 4 different shitot. What happens to this drop of milk? What happens? Right? So, if you remember the first shita, which was a samag, right? Everything's asur. Yeah, there's nothing what to talk about. Why? I can never use the food. So if I can never use the food, it hits the wall, the entire pot becomes pasul, right? It becomes non-kosher. Once the pot becomes non-kosher, now the food becomes non-kosher. Yeah, exactly. Why? Because I cannot add the food. The food is not combined to annul. It's like an annulling game, right? Which means that I have to annul the milk here. If the milk is inside, I can annul the milk. But if the milk is on the outside, I cannot add the coke to annul the milk, right? So that's the first shita. So at first, I prohibit the keli. Once the keli is prohibited, I prohibit the entire food. Yeah, once I prohibit the keli, I prohibit the food.
Okay.
Yeah, I prohibit the keli because I cannot use the food to help me. So I only have the keli. The drop goes into the keli. The keli becomes prohibited. Once the keli becomes prohibited, then I'm going to come and I'm going to prohibit the food. That was the sama. Which one? Yeah, always on the outside. It never went on the inside of the keli. Always on the outside. Always on the outside.
You were showing the other, so that's why it's...
Yeah, that's why I said here, on the outside. Always on the outside. Always on the outside of the keli. We're not talking about inside. If it goes on the inside, there's nothing what to talk about. If it goes on the inside and it goes into the food, you use the food. That's it. There's nothing what to talk about the walls of the keli.
When I use the food.
What?
You use the food,
okay.
Yeah, you use the food. Yeah.
So the
Fine.
outside is the big problem.
Exactly. That's the problem. But that's when it normally happens.
Huh?
That's when it normally happens. It normally spritzes on the outside of the keli, not on the inside. Yeah? So that was the first sheet of the samak. We had the manam or tumul. Samak and the ravan. Now we're going to come and we're going to speak about, right? Which one?
Just a glass
מספר 3, לא, מספר 3.
No, the Bet Yosef was explaining the samak. Okay? So now he says like this. The drops of the milk opposite the contents of the pot. So now we're going to say like this. Shulchan Aruch and Sif Hey Paskins based on the samak, right? As follows. One more time. This was the third shita. Okay? What was the third shita? Everyone remembers? It all depends where the drop falls. Over here or over here?
Part.
On the empty part or the full part? Everyone clear? Very good. Says Shulchan Aruch Sif Hey Paskins based on the samak that if a drop of milk splashes on a meaty pot cooking on the fire in an area that the opposite the contents of the pot, if there's shishim in the food, yeah, in the pot against the drop of the milk, the contents are permitted. The Shulchan Aruch explains that a drop falling opposite the contents of the pot is similar to a drop falling in the pot itself, where if there's shishim, everything is permitted, implying that even if the pot does not have to be koshered. So that's already a chidush, meaning like this. One more time. This is the case, correct? Right? The drop falls right here. Do I have 60 times? Shulchan Aruch now. Shulchan Aruch. The drop falls here. Do I have shishim in the?
Yes.
First, go to shishim. So if I've got shishim, not only do I say that the food is mutar, the pot is kosher.
In the bottom part.
What do you mean
The entire pot.
What do you mean the pot?
לא, אמרנו אם זה למעלה וזה ריק לא.
Huh?
What do you mean the pot is cold?
I don't have to kosher the pot.
Okay.
The pot is kosher. So now he says that is going to be when it falls over here. However, though, the Raman Sivbab argues that the pot requires koshering because we're worried that some of the milk still remains in the walls of the pot. So according to him, no, you're right. The food is kosher for sure because there's 60 times opposite the pot. But maybe there's still a little bit of milk in the pot. An actual pot that stays there. Because where did it fall? It fell on the
On
pot.
the outside.
So he says, because of that, you still have to kosher the pot. So according to the Ashkenazim, you have to kosher the pot. According to Sfaradim, no. Nevertheless, Beretev quotes a Pri Chadash Upaskins based on the Shulchan Aruch that he says the pot does not need to be kosher if the pot is normally used for quantities much larger than a few drops of milk, such that they would always be batil b'shishim. He says like this. What was the case over here? He says you don't have to worry about it. Why don't you have to worry about it? He says if it falls over here and there's going to be a drop, what's going to happen? You've got such a big pot. You always have shishim keneged that drop. You know what it is? A drop of milk. Yeah. One drop of milk. You got. We're not talking about a small little tiny rice, rice pot or a little tiny. We're talking about a big. You understand? You know how much you have keneged. You've got tons, right? So therefore, you don't have a problem.
Well, usually it's not a drop that falls.
Okay, well, even if it's going to be 2 drops, 3 drops. Okay, fine. The Rama adds, right, that since we are concerned that some of the milk remains in the walls of the pot, right? So he says the contents of the pot need to be taken out immediately and poured from the opposite side of where the milk touched the pot. So says the Rama, what am I supposed to do then? It fell over here, but there might still be a little bit of milk over here. So even if I'm going to say that the food is kosher, what should I do? He says, you know what you do? Immediately take out the food the other way.
Transfer
it fell here, take it out from this way. Pour from this way, not from that way. Pour from the other way, the exact opposite way.
And
now we're going to go to the next part, which is basically going to be what happens if the drops of milk fall, right, opposite the empty section of the pot. You remember? So this was the top part of the pot now. So we're going to say like this. Shulchan Aruch and Sif Hey continues that according to the Sama, that if the drop of milk falls on the outside of an uncovered pot, because if it's going to be covered, we're going to speak about it. Because maybe it changes in the fact that if it's covered, maybe the entire pot is considered ki'ilu, there's food all over it. So we'll speak about it later on, okay? So he says, right, if it's going to be that it falls on the outside of the uncovered pot, opposite the empty part, we are concerned that the milk, right, spread up to 59.9 times its own volume and up to the contents in the pot, forbidding that entire area. So meaning like this, magically, right, because remember, usually when you come and you say that something falls here, it's going to spread out equally. But if it spreads out down here, it becomes batel. So what I'm going to say is that it's going to hit here, and then it's going to do, thank you, right? It's going to spread out like this. You understand? Like it's going to go around, but always on the top. Only on the top area, not on the bottom. Because remember, if it goes on the bottom, that's it. So it has to be on the top area. Okay? So he says now, okay, for this reason, you should wait for the contents of the pot to cool down, and then you empty it, which means like this. If right now this top area becomes non-kosher, so what's going to happen? So it's going to be a problem. So you know what you're going to do? What you're going to do is you're going to wait until it gets cold. Why? If I'm going to pour it out now at any time, I'm going to make a pasul. I'm going to make it non-kosher. It's a problem. So what do? Wait until it becomes cold. Now that I wait, it becomes cold. Now I can do whatever I want. Because now it's cold. Once it's cold, it doesn't make
it cold.
Huh?
Can you make it cold?
Yeah, make it cold. How do you make it cold?
Turn it off. Put ice.
How?
Put ice.
On the outside?
No, inside. Put inside ice.
Or put it in the refrigerator.
Yeah. Put it in the freezer. Do whatever you want. Yeah. Make it cold. 100%. Make it cold and then you empty the pot. That's what you're supposed to do. You're supposed to make it cold and empty the pot. Okay?
So you can make it cold, you put some ice inside.
Yeah. 100%. Okay? Fine. Next. Since if you immediately empty the pot, some of the contents will inevitably touch the forbidden area, right, and become prohibited. Okay? So the shach, right, he comes and he says, and daruch shulchan. He comes and he says, right, so you should not even create a hole in the bottom of the pot to drain the contents while they're hot, since doing so may cause the food or soup to move and come in contact with the non-kosher area above the liquid. Meaning, don't start to, you know what, they're going to make a hole in the bottom. And then, no, don't do nothing. Just wait until it becomes cold. However, the Shach writes, he says, that if there's going to be shishim in the area of the pot, right, of the wall, that potentially becomes forbidden, if you accidentally pour out the contents, even while it's going to be hot, it's permissible, since it's batel b'shishim. Okay, until you were clear? Fine. However, you're allowed to empty the contents from the other side. Shulchan Aruch writes in Sivav that in the case where milk falls opposite an empty portion of the pot, if the contents of the pot do not have 600 times the drops that fell, which again was a shishim times shishim. You remember that's how we got the 3,600, right? So the custom is to forbid the food, even if you waited for the contents, right, to cool down, right? Because again, it could be that it's going to be prohibited. Nevertheless, the distinction applies. If the milk drops fell on the outer wall of the pot exposed to the direct flame, we assume that the fire is strong enough to burn the milk, and both the pot and the contents are permitted. But if it's a larger amount of milk spills, even if it's going to be opposite the flame, the pot and the food remain forbidden, which means like this. There's a general rule that whenever there's the fire burns the yisur. So right now, let's say there was a fire. Okay, nowadays we have the fire on the bottom. But let's say the pot was here and there's the fire. So he says if the drop of milk hit right here and the fire is right here below, so I'm going to say the fire burnt out. It got rid of this drop. But he says, but if it's going to be on another side where the fire is not there, it's on the fire, but it's not there, so it doesn't do that. Or if it's too much of a liquid, right? So then it's not going to burn it out. So therefore, in such a case, it's going to be a problem. So to summarize, we're going to say, right? The Shulchan Aruch and Siv Zayin, on Erev Shabbat, right? We can rely, or in any case of need, for example, financial loss or guests. So he says, we may rely upon the Ravan and be lenient even when the drop of milk falls opposite the empty part of the pot and not opposite the flame. In such a case, we assume that the milk travels to the food and it is permitted if there's going to be shishim in the pot, right, against, right, the milk. The Shach clarifies that you should preferably wait for the food to cool down, as was taught in Sifim Hey Tavav. But if needed, you may pour out the contents while hot by tilting the pot, right, from the side that did not come in contact with the milk. It should be noted that according to the Aruch HaShulchan today, the accepted psak is always to be lenient, regardless of whether the drop fell opposite the food or not. If there is shishim in the pot, everything is permitted, even not during Shat Dapak. So basically what he's trying to say is, even though the Ashkenazim, they were much more machmirim, nowadays the minhag is, you could be mikkel. Yeah, you don't have that problem. Okay?
On this situation, because they have guests before Shabbat.
Huh? He sponsored it, yeah.
Okay, so.
We said at the beginning of the shiur.
So what is it, Rabbi?
Huh? I don't know where I was up to. Okay. Summarize. Okay? To summarize, when a drop of milk falls on the outside of the hot pot that is on the fire, its status depends on where it lands. Okay? So one more time. If the milk lands opposite the food and there's shishim in the food against the milk, the food is permitted. Regarding the pot, machloke between Shulchan Aruch and Ramah. Shulchan Aruch, you don't have to kasher the pot. According to the Ramah, you do. Okay? He says, unless he says, right, if he says, the Pri Chadash says that if you're always going to have such a big pot, you don't need to. Right? One second. If the drop of milk falls opposite an empty part of the pot, and there's shishim in the pot against the drops, strictly speaking, you have to wait for the contents to cool down, and then you remove them. But the pot needs to be kosher. However, the custom is to forbid the food in case it moved. In case of great need, such as Erev Shabbat, or if there's no time to cook more, you may empty the pot before it cools down, as long as you pour it from the other side. And additionally, if there's 3,600 times the drop of milk, so then it's going to be okay, still going to be permitted, because then you have shishim kaful shishim, that we spoke about, 60 times 60. If the milk drops falls opposite an exposed flame, both the pot and the contents are going to be permitted according to all the opinions, because we said that it's going to be permitted. And here you have the, how do you call it? The chart.
What?
The chart.
Oh.
The tavla. Here you have the chart. Look on page 10. Yeah, you have the chart.
Is there some up?
Yeah, we don't have a whiteboard, but we have a chart. Yeah. The chart says as follows. Yeah, milk falls opposite the food. So one more time, if there's shishim against the milk, the food is permitted and should be immediately removed from the side of the pot that did not come in contact with the milk. What about the pot? Shulchan Aruch, it's still kosher. The Ramah, no. But according to the Pri Chadash, right, again, you don't need to kasher it if it's always used much more than shishim. Meaning if it's a big, huge pot and you had a drop of milk coming in, you always are going to have shishim keneged. You're not going to use a big pot for some small amount of food. So therefore, you don't have a problem. Okay? Next case, milk falls opposite the empty section of the pot. So if there's shishim against the milk, wait for it to cool down and remove the pot. If there's 3,600 times the milk, you may remove even when it's hot. But only from the side that it did not come in contact with the milk.
How can you measure 3600?
I was about to say the same thing.
How do you measure it? So obviously it's with shiura dat, which means you come and you see a splash, you see a drop, right, that comes. You're going to take in your mind, you're going to say, how many drops do I have? If I'm going to take a drop of milk right now, and I'm going to splish it here. Yeah, I'm going to say, do I have 60 drops? Can I get that one drop?
60 drops, yes.
Yes. Do I have 3,600 drops?
I don't know.
I probably even would say yes.
Huh?
Yeah?
No? In this cup right here, you don't have 3,600 drops?
I don't know. I haven't tried it. I
No?
haven't really measured that.
Probably not.
I think you do.
Yeah?
Yeah. I think you do.
Can we do it by weight?
No, wait. You would have to, mamash, take a thing, the little thing. 1, 2, 3, 4. I think you would have. Now again, we're not talking about a cup. We're talking about a pot. Yeah, so Jack, remember, we're not talking about a cup. We're talking about a pot. So imagine, you know what I mean? If we have a pot and one drop, you're gonna have 3,600. You could have it.
Between 0.03 and 0.05
Milliliters. So so that's one drop. So times that by 3,600, 3,600.
How many milliliters?
Even take the more stringent view, so you don't have the thing.
The bigger one?
Yeah, even if you take the bigger one. Let's pretend.
You see so?
How many?
You see so?
Regarde sur quoi? It's very hard to remember everything. 180.
180 milliliters. You have much more than 180 milliliters.
No, that's like 200 milliliters.
Exactly.
Not even.
What?
That's 200 milliliters.
200 milliliters. The truth is, these are the small cup.
This cup.
The 10-ounce cup. Oh, we don't have 10 ounces anymore? No, okay, fine. Not the 10 ounces. Right? You've got much more. No, but I'm sorry. 1 second. This is 8 ounces.
Like 240. 740.
Exactly. Yeah, for sure.
It's very hard to remember everything.
You have it. There's no doubt. Remember, Chazonish is 150 milliliters. How much did you say? 180. 150 milliliters is what do we say? It was 5.4 ounces. Okay? We just said this is an 8-ounce cup. Right? We used to have the 10 ounces. Yeah, Chasra. I don't know where they went. Okay, whatever.
Well, we are
Right?
cutting now.
Oh, okay, fine.
It is 237.
237 milliliters. You need 180. So you're fine. Yeah, you're fine. And again, when we're talking about a cup. We're not talking about a pot. You know what a pot is? Right? Effie, יש לך סיר יותר קטן מזה?
לא, אין.
כמה פעמים הסיר הזה יותר גדול מזה?
לא, סיר ברור.
That's what we're talking about. ריבונו של עולם, ברור. That's what we're talking about. We're talking about a seed.
Boss.
No, we're not talking about a cost. We're talking about a seed.
הוא
We're talking about
הוא שותה.
Huh? A seed is a pot. We're talking about a pot.
למה?
So imagine, what you need is
הוא שותה
3,600.
ואשתו
מי מדבר על קפה עכשיו?
תקשיב רגע, אשתו באה עם
לא מדברים על הקפה.
טיפה בשר,
Fine.
לא משנה.
Yeah, so we're talking about right now, right, a seed. To have 3,600, you could have it. You understand? But again, you have to make a calculation. Because then we were talking about 1 drop, doctor. What happens if we're talking about now 10 drops? Now you have to times that by, you understand? So obviously we have to see what happened. You understand? What was the story? Right? But obviously we have it here.
So in a normal cup, two drops, that's it. It's the limit.
It all depends on what size is the cup.
Normal cup.
Milk falls opposite an empty section of the pot, but opposite a fire. It's always going to be permitted. That we already spoke. Fine. Practical applications. So now we're going to speak practicality. Number 1. Okay. What is the halacha if a drop of milk falls on the lid of a pot in which the fleshik food is cooking? So again, it's on the lid, not on the pot, on the lid. Lid. The cover.
Yeah.
The cover. The cover of the pot. That's called the lid. Here, it fell. Okay? So, the Ramah at the end of Siv Zayin Paskins, that if the contents of the pot are boiling and the lid is on, the entire pot is considered full because the airspace between the food and the lid is filled with steam. Meaning that then that's what happens with the majority of the pots, right? Usually, right? Majority. Again, majority. There's always a tiny cloud. But you have a pot. The pot is covered. The food is up to here, but it doesn't matter. Because once it's covered, the entire thing is one. So therefore, the second, it's kilu yesh ochel bakol. אם יש אוכל bakol, right? So it's very
Very
good. So therefore, when the milk falls on the lid, it's considered opposite the food. The halacha is that if you have shishim against the milk, the contents are permitted. What about the lid? Shulchan Aruch paskins. What does Shulchan Aruch say?
הפוך מהזה.
The what? The outside. What does Shulchan Aruch say? If the food is going to be kosher, what's going to happen?
The pot is going to be.
The pot is kosher. And if the pot is kosher, obviously here we're talking about the lid. So the lid is going to be kosher. What does the Rabbi say?
הפוך, לא קשור כלום. צריך להפוך.
Right? You have to be machshid only the pot, but not the food. The food is kosher. So he says.
But the lid is also.
1 second. So he says, however, though, if you take a pot of chicken soup, right? He says from the fridge and you heat it up and only later discover that there were drops of milk on the lid, it's considered as if the milk fell on an area not opposite the food because the lid would have reached Yad Soledebo before the airspace of the pot is filled with steam. Meaning he says, where did it come? Where did it come? The drops. If the drops fell, and that, so now it all depends on what's going on. You understood? That's what they say. Pri-toar. Yeah, the pri-toar comes in paskins that whenever a pot is boiling with a lid, the entire pot has the status of opposite the food. Therefore, whether a drop of milk falls on the lid or on the walls, right, that are technically opposite the airspace, it still is opposite the food, it's always permitted. Okay, fine. Handles.
What did you get? I'm sorry.
What did he say? No, he said the exact same thing. What is the pri-toar? The Orach Chaim HaKadosh. Rabbeinu Hayim Ben Atar. Okay? Yes. So he comes and he says like this, the handles of the kli now. The handles of the kli, I don't know what to show. Okay. I've got.
להביא את האסלן?
Okay, bring it. Yeah. לא, אצלן, מה שיש בתוך המטבח.
מה?
על הידית של הזכוכית, של איפה שעושים את הביצים. Yeah?
המכסה אתה מתכוון.
המכסה.
ידי.
כן. The handles of the kli. We're going to see, right, what exactly we're referring to, okay? But we're talking about the handles now, okay? What is the halacha, okay, if drops of milk fall on the handles of a kli? The handles of the kli. We're going to see right now. There you go. That's the handles. Okay? Usually the handles are in the middle, right? Usually it's in the middle, right? But here it's over, okay? Usually it's in the middle. But here it's on the handles. Okay? So he says like this. If the handles are not yet soledable, he says the Magen Avraham paskins that they do not absorb any flavor. He says, why? Because it's not yet soledable, meaning the handles are usually made in such a fashion that it doesn't get boiling hot. So if it doesn't get boiling hot, therefore,
but the one you have on top.
Let's see. So he says they do not absorb any flavor. If the handles are hot and welded into the pot, then they're considered part of the pot. And the halacha will depend on whether there's food opposite the handle, right? Whether the lid is on. However, if the handles are screwed in, then the Badei HaShulchan quotes the Yad Yud, the Rabbi Kiva Eger, and Rabbi Yehuda Paskin that this is viewed as two dry kelim touching, where flavor does not transfer from one to another.
Wow.
Okay, he does note, though, that the Radbaz seems to Paskin that they are considered one piece, and therefore would have the same status as if they were welded together. But the HaShulchan concludes, which means like this. We're going to learn that if you have one hot pot of meat and one hot pot of milk, and they touch each other, right? The milk is in here. It's invisible, yeah? They do this. Mutar or asur. They're both boiling hot.
No, they're mutar. Rama and
it was something with a sweat. It was something with sweat.
Oh, they become one.
One more time. I've got meat, milk, both boiling, hot pots, touch each other on the outside.
They become pasul shnehem. According to what we said, that the lid becomes one.
Yeah, Dr. Koshia, now you're talking. No, continue.
What did you say?
Before we talk about the drop of milk on the outside of the pot. Yeah, but
here there's no liquids. Yeah. The liquid is the conductor.
Is the one.
Conductor. How do you say conductor?
And the metal is not a conductor?
No. When you have two hot metals and they put together, they do not fuse the meat to the milk, which are the contents of the insides. And therefore it's brought down in the Shulchan Aruch and the Ramah that if you have two pots on top of the fire and they touch each other, if there's no liquid, it's fine.
But there is the steam, no?
No liquid between.
There's no, how's there steam?
No,
Steam is on the top.
no. But
Steam is on the
my
top.
question is that to me, metals are conductors.
So the metals do not conduct unless you're going to have that the liquid in between. The liquid is the fuse that brings them together. That's what we just read. Let's read it again one more time.
And if it's piece of meat,
We will learn.
if it's piece of meat, then it's okay.
No.
What?
If
A liquid. We will learn below that if a hot meaty pot with meat touches a hot dairy pot with milk, it is permitted as long as there's no moisture on the outside of the pots to facilitate the transfer of flavor. Right? Those are those words. We're going to learn it much more in Fudash later on, but he says we're going to learn it later on. He does note, though, that the Rabbas, the right seems to Paskin, that they are considered one piece because, so now, sorry, let me go back. So what happened? If I'm going to say that this is considered, there's two different types. Interesting. This is the one which is completely.
Yeah, but you're getting work.
Okay. So, right? Yeah, so, right, when this is welded in, right, when this is welded in, this is a little bit different. So he says like this. This one, it could be that it's not even going to be atzoledable. But this one, maybe yes. So therefore, what he's trying to say like this, if this is considered a separate entity, and right here it falls, so the question is like this, is it considered one piece? So therefore, if it falls here, and so it's all one piece, now you have a problem. Or do you say, this is considered a separate piece, this became pasul. So this is like a hot pot touching the other hot pot. There's no liquid in between. You understand what we just did?
Yeah.
That's what we just did.
But
We said
if it's a pan and the handle.
Who was said that there'll be a
The pan and you have the handle. There, I would say probably it's two separate things because it's only attached over here. Over here is a completely different object.
So with this,
There on the top, it's welded in. It's within inside.
so
You
with this
understand?
shita is a cooler.
Which one?
With this shita is a cooler.
Well, that's the difference between them. We've got a machloket here.
But
Yeah.
didn't we say that when they are like screwed in is considered according to one opinion, no?
Yes, welded in. Yes.
Welded, no, like welded.
Yes.
If it is screwed in, it's like welded.
Yeah, so that's going to be one opinion. That's what we're making a machloket. We're making basically a machloket like this. Do you say that if it's screwed in, it's all one piece?
Here we have it,
Right?
It's all screwed in.
Yeah. So do we say that it's considered one piece, or do you consider it two different pieces just touching each other?
Machloket.
That's a machloket. Okay. What about drops of meat sauce on a hot water urn? So we spoke about the kumkum of Shabbat, hot water. It's parve. All of a sudden, meat comes, boom, splashes. Right? Imagine you wanted to add hot water to the adafina, to the chamin. It was burning on Shabbat. So what do? You come and you add the hot water.
No, you
Right?
don't do that.
Fine. You add hot water there. Okay. Now what happens is it spritzed hot water onto the urn. Now I want to come and I want to make
the meat,
not the meat, a drop of the liquid from the meat
the chamin
Jumps up, jumps up and it gets to the urn.
Okay.
So now of the kumkum. Now the urn, the kumkum is the urn. So that now the
On
kumkum,
the outside.
the outside, obviously outside. Huh?
And by hand,
So
right?
now,
Because
so
it's
now,
cooking, so the
so
steam
now,
flavor-
1 second. So now what we say is as follows, right? I want to make now a milky, I want to make a coffee.
Oh, no.
Yeah. So,
No
Yeah.
problem.
so the
Because
question
even
is,
before is the steam, it's as long as it's cooking,
Yeah,
the
bro.
steam is full clean. Rabbi,
parallel.
we said it's a full clean if it's still cooking.
So 1 second. So he says like this. Often when cleaning up after Shabbat meal, preparing for one, some nitzos can spritz on the outside of a metal hot water urn. And if this happens, may use the water to make a dairy coffee. So based on what we learned, based upon what we learned above, yeah. So he says if there's going to be shishim in the urn against the drops of meat to the sauce, the water remains parve. And even if the meat sauce lands above the water level, right? Obviously, everything's still going to be okay because if it's covered, it's all one. So there's no problem. He says, but do you need to kosher the urn?
No.
One more time. The water in itself, we just said it should be a problem. That's part of it. But what about the urn? According to Shulchan
Shulchan
Aruch,
Aruch lo.
right? You don't need to do anything, right? According to the Rama,
Okay.
he says you would need to do it. But if there's going to be, he says over here like this, he says it only applies when the milk falls on a meaty pot, since there's a potential fusion of basar v'chalav. However, the urn is part of it, and it only contains water. So there's no mixture of basar v'chalav. Therefore, even according to the Rama, you don't have to kasher it. He says, especially since next time you use it, will be next Shabbat. It's not ben yomo. So therefore, you have that heter. Plus, you have the pri chadash. He says, why? Because he paskins that only when only a few drops fall onto the pot, it contains many times more than drops, the pot does not need to be kosher. So again, that's why you have a few different reasons to be mekel.
But it's all going
So
to
here, not
Sometimes
even
like this.
the Shulchan Aruch, even according to the Rama, you don't need to kosher the pot.
Rama בגלל שבת.
The urn.
רמה בגלל שבת.
Which one?
רמה בגלל אומר בגלל שבת.
No. The Rama was talking about because he was talking about basar v'chalav. We're not talking about basar v'chalav. We're only talking about a water pot, which is a part of it.
What if
Right?
the urn you keep it the entire week? I have the urn on the whole week.
So if you have the urn on the entire week, so you don't have this heter of not ben yomo, but you still have the heter of the pri chadash that you always usually will have 60 times that spritz or whatever it is. Number one, and number two, you also have the other heter that it's not basar v'chalav. It's always part of a water. So since it's always part of a water,
Yeah,
when did the
but I'm
Rama
going
say
to
that
make
you have to
coffee with it,
kosher? Right? When
So
did the Rama say?
Urn doesn't become anything.
Yeah, nothing happens. You don't have to do anything to go.
Plus the cooking, you remember?
What cooking?
If there is a cook, it's a pot.
No, the cooking is for the water. I don't care about the water. Now I'm talking about the pot. We're talking about the urn.
Same thing.
The urn
No,
is
it's not. The urn is
clean
different
of
than the food.
Same thing.
It's not the same thing. The urn is different to the food. One more time.
No, I
You have the
understand.
urn
Wait
and then
a
you have the
second.
food.
Before, Rabbi, if I may please, with the pots.
Wow.
What about now spills on the kitchen counter? So now he comes and he says as follows. Okay? In this section, we're going to discuss some common questions involving spills on the kitchen counter. For example, what is halakha if you place a hot pot on the counter,
Place it.
right? So for example, I'm going to ask you a question. I come and I take a hot pot and I put it on the counter. Does the counter become meaty?
No,
Why not?
because that's how we thought. I'm telling you the truth. I don't know.
Huh?
Liquid or
What's liquid?
if there is Yeah.
Now you're talking.
Yeah.
Very good. So there's no liquid, right? There's no conductor. So the how do you call this? So the countertop, right, will not become meaty. So he says that like this. What is the status? He says, sorry. So he said, what is the halakha if you place a hot meaty pot on the counter and then you discover that there was milk spilled there? So if it was just stam that you put on the counter's not meaty. The counter's not milky, right? But when you put them hot meaty pot, all of a sudden you come and realize there's milk there, right? So he says, what is the status of the pot? And what is the status of the food?
But the pot
I'll-
doesn't touch, the pot just touched the counter.
Yeah, well, no, it's on the milk on the counter now.
Yeah, but
So there is
There was milk. There was milk spilled there.
still no
put the
problem.
pot.
And you put the hot meaty pot on top of the milk.
No problem.
Yeah,
Why no
1 minute.
problem for tourism?
So he says, 1 minute. Alternatively, what is halakha if you remove your chicken soup from the stove, a few minutes later you're preparing your coffee, and the milk spilled and touched the hot pot? What is the status of the food and the pot? So he comes and he says like this. The Rama in Sif Zayin addresses 4 possible scenarios related to kitchen spills. Okay, we've got 4 different scenarios, and that's what we're going to speak about today. Number 1, hot milk. Hot milk falls on the counter, and you accidentally place hot meaty pot with meat on top of it. So you've got hot
and hot.
and hot. The pot needs to be kosher, but the food is permitted. The Rama explains the food is the pot is not kosher.
So you have to
You kosher the
Okay.
pot, but the food is permitted. He says the Rama explains that when the hot milk spills on the counter, it's a kli sheni, a secondary vessel, which halachically is considered cooled off. So then when you place the hot pot on the cold milk, right? It's not really cold, but it's like cold, but it's a kli sheni.
No, you apply.
So then tatagavar, what we learned last week, tatagavar, the cold bottom prevails, and it only fuses its flavor into the pot kedei klipa, the thickness of an onion peel. And therefore, the pot is forbidden. But the food, right, is going to be permitted.
זה רמה.
Right? What?
זה רמה.
What's the Rama?
זה השיטה של הרמה.
What?
שיטה של מי זה?
This is Shulchan Aruch.
זה שולחן ערוך?
The Rama brings it down, the Shulchan Aruch doesn't argue. Yeah? Number 2. Okay, now he comes like this. What happens right now if you have a meaty pot, which is near the fire, and the milk spills underneath it? The pot and the food are going to be prohibited. The Shach explains that even if the spilled milk is cold, everything is prohibited and we cannot apply tatagavar because the top is constantly being heated and will eventually heat up the milk, which forbids the entire pot. Because again, since the pot is by the fire, right, that it's basically still being heated by the fire, so therefore what happens is that now it's going to prohibit everything. So obviously we're going to see about nowadays. In our modern day gas stovetops, the above case is almost impossible because it's impossible for a pot on the stovetop to be sitting on milk since the grates elevate the pot over the stovetop surface. However, the Rama's case is very possible with an induction or electric stovetop or a plata or a blech where the milk spills underneath the pot and then the pot is there and it's underneath it or near the heat source. If this happens, the pot and the food are forbidden, okay, because the pot is continually being heated and then again, it's going to absorb the milk. Number 3, Shulchan Aruch speaks about something which is called Irui Kli Rishon. Irui, when I pour this somewhere else, that's called Irui, is like a Kli Rishon. What does that mean? When I'm pouring, it's like the original Kli Rishon, the original force of the keli. Hot contents poured from a hot pot that was on the fire is mevashel kedei klipa. It cooks an onion peel. You know when you see this many, many times, how many times does it happen that you have frozen meat? And what do I want to do? I want to defrost it. So what do? You put it under hot water. When you put it under hot water, what you're only doing is just you're melting, but only kedei klipa. You touch the bottom side, it didn't cook anything. It's still frozen. You touch even the middle, it's still frozen. Where does it start heating up? Like an onion peel. It starts the surface. And the more and more as it continue going, it continues it, but it's always the surface. It's not going to penetrate the entire thing. Now, many times what they do is what you said, you put it in cold water, right? Or you just put it in water, and you just leave it there, temperature water, whatever, not the cold, just regular tepid, lukewarm water, and you just leave it there. And then little by little, it's going to defrost or whatever it is, right? But to come and to think that I'm going to pour hot water, and now hot water is only going to penetrate the top. So he says here, that's called Irui Kikli Rishon. So he says, if the stream is interrupted, the liquid is like a kli sheni, which cannot absorb or transfer, right? Which means like this. What is Irui? Irui is, I come like this, and I'm pouring. That's called Irui. Irui is pouring. If I go like this, and it stops, the flow is not connected anymore. That's now called kli sheni. Okay? That's a secondary vessel. That's not Irui anymore. Irui could only cook if it's connected to its original power source, its original fire source. So he says, therefore, A, if there's a pot of cold chicken soup on the counter nearby, right? Hot milk spills from your milk on the counter, right? So he says, but there's not a continuous stream from the milk to the meaty pot. So then the pot and the food are permitted because the stream of milk is a kli sheni. If it's a kli sheni, it cannot cook. If the hot milk, right? And again, the chicken soup was cold. So therefore, he said, if the hot milk from the frother spills in a continuous stream and touches the meaty pot while the milk is yet soledable, then the pot needs to be koshered because again, you have kedei klipa, but the contents of the pot are going to be permitted. Remember, usually, if you're only going to prohibit the pot kedei klipa, right, which is an onion peel, you will usually always have 60 times the food keneged the kedei klipa. Okay, but if the cold milk, number 4, if the cold milk spills on a hot pot, the pot and the contents are forbidden because tata gavar. What does that mean? Cold milk on a hot pot. So what happens? The pot. What? No. Now we're talking about the top and the bottom. So he says the cold milk spills on a hot pot, right? He says the pot and the contents are forbidden because of tata gavar, because the bottom always wins. Remember that the bottom always wins, right? The Shach writes that this line in the Ramah that it's going to be Tata Gavar can be understood in three different ways. The milk is spilled from a higher level, right? Even though it ultimately hits the bottom of the pot. The pot is not in motion, or we're discussing a case where cold milk spills on the lid of the pot and not when it runs on the counter. But whichever way that you're going to explain it, again, these are just different explanations and how to understand. Remember that it's always the bottom which is going to overcome, right, the ones on the top. Okay, Bezat Hashem, and we're going to continue next time with the number.
So, and if it's